You've made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession on the world's #1 chiropractic podcast. This episode is brought to you by Peach State Payments. Ethical processing, more profit, less stress. Chiro HD, more than an EHR. Projects management simplified. The Chiro Speaking Company. Attract, educate, and convert. Chiro Spring, cloud-based, user-friendly software with all the essential features chiropractors need. Redmond Relight. The IFCO. Chiro Moguls. Chiro Health USA. Sherman College of Chiropractic. Pure Chiro Notes, Titronics, and Life West College of Chiropractic. Let's hustle. This episode of Chiro Hustle is brought to you by Relight Hydration by Redmond. Here's the truth. Most Americans are walking around dehydrated, low energy, brain fog, muscle cramps, headaches, and they think they need more caffeine, when what they actually need are electrolytes. Hydration isn't just water. It's sodium, potassium, and trace minerals that help your body actually absorb and use the water. That's where Relight comes in. Made with Redmond real salt. No artificial junk, no neon dyes, no sugar overload, just clean, balanced electrolytes designed to support hydration, muscle function, and optimal daily performance. And here's the best part. Grab their sample pack with multiple flavors so you can find your favorite. Once you dial it in, it's an easy daily habit you'll stick with for life. Chiropractors understand this. The nervous system runs on electrical signals. Electrolytes help support that communication. If you're tired or feeling drained by 2 p.m., this is your upgrade. Go to chirohustle.com and get 25% off Relight with our exclusive promo. If you want a wholesale Redmond products, see the show notes for the wholesale application. Hydrate smarter, perform better, stay aligned.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 769 of the Chiro Hustle podcast. I'm your producer, Luke Millette, and here's your host, James Chester.
So today we had opportunity of interviewing Dr. Donny Epstein. If you want to hear our conversation about energetics and the evolution of chiropractic, stay tuned for the full episode. Welcome back. This is another episode of the Chiro Hustle podcast. Today I have Donny Epstein on with me. I've been going after this guy for a couple of years, and now we finally got him on for an episode. He's episode 769. This show's been running for about 8.5 years, which it's really an honor for me to have you on, Donny. But before we get into your story and talking about life and chiropractic and the work that you do, I want to let everybody know our big why. Why do we do what we do at Chiro Hustle? Well, first things first is we protect freedom of speech. We would never censor anybody. Everybody that talks gets heard. And I believe that that's really important to have freedom of speech, especially for the profession of chiropractic, because as we know, some of the colleges and some of the education models are censoring and removing the lexicon from the profession. So we're doing everything we can to uphold it and keep it pure. We also believe in medical freedom and family health freedom. Those are not the same things. If you need guidance on those topics, reach out to a chiropractor in your neighborhood. I'm sure they'd love to take care of you and your family and answer any questions you have. Then we get a bit more philosophical. We do protect BJ Palmer Sacred Trust. I know that that's the last written words from BJ Palmer. If you want to learn more about the profession, go check it out. Find out what the Sacred Trust is. Go to the show notes, chirohustle.com. Read up on the Sacred Trust and why we do the work that we do over here. And then philosophically speaking further, I know that Donny and I are going to talk about subluxation, which I'm really thrilled about because he has some models that we're going to talk about based on the Australian Spinal Research Foundation and a definition over there. That many leaders in the profession had founded and agreed upon. So I'm really excited for discussing that. But we do believe in innate intelligence, universal intelligence, and the educated intelligence. We believe that when man or woman, the physical gets adjusted, it connects them to man or woman, the spiritual. With that being said, Donny Epstein, welcome to the show.
It's an honor to be here, and thank you for your tenacity in getting this scheduled.
Yeah, as many messages, in-person meetings, and the universe shifted, and here we are, January 27th, 2016. So Why chiropractic? How did you decide that this was the right profession for you?
Well, I was an art history major and a bio major. And I was interested in the nervous system. And I did an experiment in physiology class. And a friend of mine had experiments with rats running mazes. And I had read about work with planaria flatworms. And when you cut the flatworm in half, the head grows no tail and the tail grows no head. But they trained them to avoid certain, I think, light experiences. The part that grew new head had the RNA and the proteins to assemble the memory that the head had. So I said, well, maybe memory is not just located in the brain. And where is it? Well, I did an experiment then where we, quote, sacrificed the rats from a friend of mine who was doing a rat experiment to see what was different about the rats that practiced or didn't practice the maze. So I asked before he killed them, turn them over to me. I want to check the RNA base ratios of the brain of the rats for those who ran a maze, those who didn't run a maze, and different types of mazes. And it was a crude experiment, but the idea got me because those that were exposed to the maze had a greater number of RNA proteins, and different mazes had different types of ratios of that. That led me to the concept that, well, learning is maybe a global phenomenon, and I was interested in how that happened. I was going to apply for a program in physiotherapy at New York University. I my basic science grades, if I went a year before, I wouldn't have been in the campus I was in with my main teachers. If I went a year after, my grades in science weren't high enough, so it was just perfect. So I was applying for physiotherapy because they were given a program, 2-year program for a master's degree in potentially leading to a PhD if you wanted to in physiotherapy research. Now I thought it was exciting because I would do research on the spine somehow as connecting the brain and the body. I found that fascinating. Well, you would then work almost for free for 2 years afterwards in the research. Well, I was going to the mailbox with the envelope with my application and the money order. My father had Candy Store Internet Soda Shop in Brooklyn. He was always there. For some reason, he didn't work that day. And he opened a new shopping mall a few blocks from my house. My father went to that shopping mall. He running down the street, Donny, no. And as soon as saw me, he ripped up my application. I said, Dad, what are you doing? He said, you're not going to be a physiotherapist, you're going to be a chiropractor. What? Well, I just went to the mall. It opened up. It just happened today. They may have been painting the store or something. And he said, I saw 2 of your cousins. He hasn't seen them in 30 years. One was the father, one was the son. They were both chiropractors. They were at the school. They were moving to a new campus. And because they moved to a new campus, instead of like 40 students a semester, they have 200. They need more students. So even with your grades, you can get in. I said, but what's a chiropractor? He says, I saw him, they fixed my back, but he's telling me the brain and body are connected. That's what you talked about. And if you correct the alignment to the spine, the brain and body work better. And if you're interested in that, you should be a chiropractor, not a physiotherapist.
And this was 40 years ago.
Yep. So this was what, 1973. So I spoke about chiropractic, the idea that there's an organizing force. It was absolutely extraordinary. They were on the missions council, so I got admitted before I even got adjusted. Okay, it just was like, I got to do this. It's exciting. I went to a clinic. I got adjusted. They said, "Did you have seizures when you were a child?" They said, "Yeah." "Do you have this and this?" "Yeah." "How do you know?" "Because this part of the spine is connected to that." And then when I went to school, I got to learn the philosophy. This is important historically. This Tom Whitehorn was my main mentor in school. He took over after Reggie Gold left to go to South Carolina to start Sherman College. In school, we still had Stevenson's textbook. We learned a whole bunch of different techniques in school. We learned upper cervical, 2 semester practice in Talgo recoil, upper cervical analysis, X-ray marking. We did a year of constant X-ray there, a full spine, pelvic, upper, and cervical. We had Logan basic technique. We had Gonstick technique. We had terminal point technique with a Thompson terminal point with a variation by Dr. Pearson Stillwagon, where it was Pierce Stillwagon technique with that. We had a year of of SOT. We had applied kinesiology. We also had Columbia technique, because the school is Columbia Institute of Chiropractic. It was given the name New York Chiropractic College my last year. First time I saw it on my invitation for graduation. And if I was graduating, I don't care what they called it there, okay? So we had that. In Chiropractic College, we had Stevenson's textbook philosophy with essays. We were adjusting starting the second semester. We had to check, besides palpation, for taut and tender fibers, using a nervoscope or a thermograph, some type of instrumentation. We could only adjust if there was a palpatory distortion and there was instrumentation break at that area indicating it. We were asked to determine what do you think the major or minor subluxations were. The major thing to consider would be the cervical spine and the pelvis, because everything else usually went along the ride. We had second semester chiropractic college. We had a course called communication. They would name a disease. How could chiropractic help? They would say, so for example, this was this disease, it's respiratory, it's a digestive. And the only answer you could give for anything is that chiropractors don't diagnose, treat disease. Instead, they specialize in a thing called subluxation, which is interference between the brain and the body and the organizing creative force of the universe and the manifestation of the body. And health is an expression of that. We had to sign a document in school that said that we're not learning to diagnose, treat disease. That's a practice of medicine. We're practicing chiropractic as a subluxation-based care to improve the person's health potential. No matter what disease they have, the answer was the same. Above, down, inside out. Nerve supply, help the body function effectively. At that time, the ICA was not the Consistent Chiropractic Association. It was BJ's association, and they had a whole bunch of pamphlets. And every pamphlet was about disease, not treating it, but correcting the cause of disease of vertebral subluxation. And and that was the basis of my education. So we came out. So Columbia technique was full spine, diversified, which they call perversified, and Talgo recoil. And why? The way diversified technique came about was after you did your chiropractic analysis with a specific technique, you would determine which the major subluxation was, and then you would adjust the person. If the force application that technique suggested did not work, you would do diversified, but never put a force into corrective fixation, because that was protecting the brain and spinal cord. What you would do is put a force into the area for innate to accept in the most effective way possible and have an idea of how would it affect the spine globally. Look at the relation between axis and sacrum, look at the full spine. When we graduated, I got a chiropractic degree and I got a degree in spinography, chiropractic x-ray. We were told to use instrumentation palpation for the person. And with this, I was told, after you get in practice, you'll find out how to put them all together. And that started my journey.
There's so much there that I'm learning from. And after interviewing over 1,400 people in the past 8.5 years, that is an amazing ride for me to be on with you. And I think it's going to land so well with our audience, because you are speaking real philosophy of chiropractic and not what they're feeding the students today. I want to get into that eventually.
But one thing Columbia technique did, Talgo recoil, we would have to toggle a lumbar mammary process and get that to actually change. And the whole question was, is it a subluxation or is it a compensation? In every way, and to respect never, ever, ever, ever put a force in the spine because it's a misalignment, because Innate is smart. It'll make a misalignment to protect further damage to the brain and spinal cord.
So I want to get into the evolution of your work from that point forward, but I do want to go in and talk about this Australian Spinal Research Foundation definition for subluxation. You sent it to me. I'm just going to read it. It says diminished state of being from bigger or smaller overlapping circles, state of reduced coherence, state of altered biomechanical function, state of altered neurological function, state of altered adaptability. Is that right?
Yes, and I said the circles, they had the biggest circle. The biggest circle is loss of coherence.
Okay.
Inside that was a loss of the biggest circle. Excuse me. The biggest circle was a loss of beingness. The circle inside of that is a loss of coherence, and then inside of that was the biomechanical neurological adaptability. But the context was the first two. Shall I talk about how that conference came about?
Please.
There were 8 chiropractic colleges, which we considered a group of chiropractic colleges. I believe it was Life East, Life West, the Cleveland colleges, Sherman College, and Parker. I believe that was it, called the Rubicon schools. And they wanted to come up with a unified definition of subluxation, so subluxation stays within chiropractic. And Jerry Klum had a conference in Australia, and he was having another one at Life West, getting different leaders of the field to come up with a consensus of what vertebral subluxation is. What I didn't realize at the time, we found out later, they already had a definition from the New Zealand school, which I'm not sure how it was approved, but they came that, and the idea was to get them to really agree to the definition they had. And their definition was a spinal joint dysfunction with associated. The challenge with that definition, if it first is a spinal joint dysfunction, what happens, it puts you into manipulative therapy and takes you out of chiropractic principle philosophy. Okay, there. So they said we have to have that. So we started asking questions, and everyone introduced themselves, and there are people from Sherman College, some of the upper cervical practitioners. There we had Jack Ball, who's now president of Sherman College, was there. It was great. Peter Kevorkian. It was a wonderful assortment of people who are really principal chiropractors. And Danny, I wasn't invited. That's when Danny Knowles was invited. But Danny said, I'm going, why don't you just show up anyway there? So I said, okay. We saw it, and Jerry, we've had a friend relationship, personal, and he helped me through a lot of difficulties, understand the political aspect things. And he's the one who turned me on to things that would make a difference for everything after that also. And so one of the things that happened was, he said, Donny, you're here. You go, I should have known why. He said, Facebook, a picture of you and Danny. Danny on the airplane, I figured we're coming there. So Danny gets up, says he is the board of trustees of Sherman, founder of Mile High, and international director of Networks Spinal Instruction. I get up next, and I just said, I'm Donny Epstein. I represent the heart and soul of chiropractic, and don't fuck with it. Okay. So I got that, and Jerry goes like this, that point there. So I said, why are we developing a definition of subluxation? I said, that should be done by the researchers, not us. We're academians, you're chiropractors. Instead of doing that, let's take it a different direction. Jerry's getting upset with this. I said, how about instead ask a different question? What excites you and patients most about care? What's really going on? And we really came up with when someone says, oh my God, my life changed. Oh my God, I stopped smoking. Oh my God, it was about people's life and lifestyle and things. And ultimately, we came up with that it's a change in beingness. That's what excites you and other people. They don't care about subluxation. They don't care about that very removed, whether its listing is ASRP, PRI, or SHIT. They don't care what the listing is. The second thing is coherence. And Jerry said, listen, coherence, listen, the schools are not going to go for that. I said, you said you don't care what the schools go for. We're going for the reality. Coherence is not important. I said, well, people have earned a master's or PhD studying the neurological wave that goes through network and have listed as the highest level of coherence the central nervous system even seen, and even quantum entanglement between people. Coherence is a measurement of energy information efficiency, and the purpose of chiropractic is to find a source of energy to fuel the self-organizing intelligence and the proof of energy information efficiency, which creates manifestation of the mental impulse, is what's called coherence. So, and if you really want to know, the academic articles show this with the network wave. People have got master PhDs showing a new innate expression that's never happened before with organizing intelligence coherence. So coherence is the future. The challenge in the profession is a lack of coherence in all different levels. So I said, if you want to take a look how many citations of those articles have been published in all the other journals. And even in the Science News of the basic research, it listed this as one of the more popular studies. So he said, okay. So I started talked about misalignment. And then Danny and a few people said, well, there doesn't have to be a misalignment for subluxation. The vertebra. It could be misalignment of the connective tissue. It could be misalignment of the meninges. It doesn't have to have that. So we started talking about that. So it started kind of disturbing things a lot. Then people kept saying, Donny says to Jerry there, finally they could take a vote on the definition. And at that point, I had gone out to hug a tree because I had not been with a group of chiropractors and with the academic and potentially political type of thing in a while. I had to go. So I found a tree, but the door was closed. They held a visit off till they let me back in. And we took a vote. And the vote really was on this. And what Jerry Klum was saying, well, I really think we should use this definition. So Danny said, all the Rubicon schools approved of it. So Danny said, I'm a trustee as chairman. I didn't see it. Peter said, he was there. And others, we're heads. I'm the head of the school, of the trustees. We never got it. How did you get that? Well, if we sent it to the schools and the schools didn't reply, we assume they agreed to it. Okay. So this is how the Mercy other documents came along. If they didn't agree, they said it. So the idea is this is overall in the chiropractic profession how things by the cartel, so to speak, have happened. They get a group together, get a consensus, guide it, and say, that's what we're doing. The profession agrees with it. So fortunately, I'm really proud of Marcus, who is the head of the Sterling Chiropractic Research Foundation, and he had taken event program courses with us because he listened to all the evidence. He and the other members of Australian Chiropractic Research Foundation came up with the definition based upon exactly what we said, that basically the misalignment aspect, biomechanical, neurological adaptability, was secondary to a bigger impact on your life, your beingness, and your coherence level. If that's the case, then the way we have to look at chiropractic and teach chiropractic and research has to be based upon the outcomes. So that links to research that we did never been duplicated. The largest vertebral substance research study done University of California, Irvine, 1994-1995, with 2,018 patients, which actually demonstrated the improvement in self-reported health. Because ultimately, let me ask what people are saying. It's about people. It's not about the subluxation. That's what you address, not just strategy. It's how do people's lives evolve consistent with the philosophy. That's what we want to see. So he said physical, emotional, mental, stress, quality, over quality of life, and spiritual, which is called life enjoyment. And people improved in 68% in all the categories, no matter what was happening. And if you, this is important because in the study, and it's interesting, almost no schools talk about it, don't speak about it, okay, there. So what actually happened was this, that if you stop doing all the bad stuff and start doing the good stuff, less alcohol, less smoking, you maybe did yoga, meditation, watch what you ate, add more veggies, all those type of things, your total wellness index score would be 0.22. The network chiropractic at that time, which 1983 to 1985 was network chiropractic. When I started doing the retrospective study and found out other things, I changed to network spinal analysis. And network spinal is the latest evolution. Network spinal analysis 1995 to 2017, 2018, I started network spinal. Each is evolution based on what the research was showing. We upgrade our information systems. It's about time we upgrade the operating system of the human nervous system. So we have to look at the system differently for that type of aspect. So it was 0.4. It doubled. Even if you didn't tell someone what to do, they changed it. And 0.6, the ability to make healthy choices. The bottom thing people reported is a change in their being. And then in 1997, I started studying the electrical signal surface EMG going up the spine, and they found the wave that happened in network. As it moves through the system, it actually increased the information efficiency, coherence. If you held the contact on sacrum, adjusted sacrum to affect the cervical, the signal got there before it even should have gotten there. And from that, they started studying how does the nervous system basically evolve. This is important. Instead of chiropractic being based on correcting something to restore them to a prior minimal state and maintain them there, get this, BJ had the model. They didn't have this social understanding. They didn't have about the fact you could upgrade a system or operating system. Didn't have that. People are taking, you upgrade your phones, your devices. We're information systems. If you try to get dial-up service, the amount of information we have, it doesn't work. The amount of information we as humans have to process in a few moments is different than a person's whole life. We have to upgrade the system. I see chiropractic as, if it ain't intelligence, it's innate, and it's intelligence. My first network seminar in 1984, I said, you should not have to convince a person the power of the universe is flowing through them. If they don't have an actual experience of the power of the self-organization with a few sessions, then somehow the philosophy is not being manifested. Why should you have to convince somebody? You give a talk to convince somebody of something. The experience, only a unique experience with more energy and more bandwidth will ever change in anything.
That's very important for people to hear. I guarantee there's a lot of people that are going to hear this interview and they'll listen to it over and over, because the construct of what you shared with me there, most people can't put that into words. And really what you go back to over and over again is it's not about the profession, it's about the person. And
that's essential. We'll get into that. That's essential. But that came to me by the results I was seeing, the change in people and what's happening there. Now, one of the big things, the first network seminar, and then I think we'll have a basis for moving from here, was two basic principles. I found there's two types of subluxations. I looked at all different techniques. What do they have in common? And either the chiropractor was actually looking to affect the brain and spinal cord, or the nerve as it exits the foramen between segments. In 1920s, B.J. Palmer said, stop looking at the single nerve effect pressure. Look at the multiple cord tensions. And in Stevenson's textbook, he had a diagram in the etiology section of the spinal cord. And the dentate ligaments exit between the spinal cord, attaching the strips of pia to the dura attached to the vertebral column. And he says, with the dentate ligaments repositioned, the spinal cord changes its tension. And he actually had misalignment below the sacrum coccyx, causing the atlas not able to hold effectively the top. And he said, there's a multiple cord tensions, address them before you address any single nerve pressure there. So I found that there are different spinal cord, all techniques, one or two things. Either they use a lower force or a breathing pattern like SOT blocks there, or a drop piece which creates an oscillation. What happens when a drop table is that you're holding a contact and you hold it till it goes down. As that happens, an oscillation, which BJ said is how nervous system communicates, and oscillation is how it communicates, and that's how upper cervical came about, that type of thing, or a sustained gentle contact. They usually went for the anterior or inferior of the vertebra. They used the respiratory cycle. These people very often, they took care of people very often, they're on their back also. Those practice members had more visceral practices, more emotional changes, and they weren't so focused upon a physical trauma, but emotional, mental stressors. Then there were people looked into the vertebral misalignment. They used the force to realign it to the spinous process or the transverse with the force, usually a high transverse of a mechanical thing. More often, those people in the practice applied forces differently, and they very often would have practices that was more what physically happened to cause the trauma. I looked at this. I also did thermographic readings for the neurokilometer, full spine. I also used an early dermal thermograph, and I had to fit instrument to check Atlas temperature variation. And I found that if, for example, you had a distortion in Atlas, you had 0.6 degree temperature variance Celsius. That's a lot. There, if you had a C5, had a different amount, and if you had a pelvic distortion, it was 0.9 to 2 degrees Fahrenheit difference in the spinal cord of the upper cervicals. So I was using a protocol of the cervical spine, upper cervical, C1, C2, C5, or pelvis. That was following the protocol of Thompson and then Tom Whitehorn, my instructor, who had studied with Lyle Sherman. He became my main mentor there in the B.J. Palmer Clinic. He had an upper cervical x-ray lab, and he would take upper cervical x-rays, hold it up, and had 5 seconds to draw the lines with my eyes to say what the listing was on the AP lateral and base posterior. He told me things B.J. Palmer told him about stuff, and said B.J. never ever told how to adjust the axis. And what B.J. was doing, he told me, very simply, what B.J. was doing. So these two subluxations are the basis of my first network seminars. Before you do any structural adjustment or even take the listings of the axis or the pelvis, first make sure that the core tension patterns of upper cervicals were really aligned. And that number two, instead of treating the condition or symptom, help the person to have an experience, innate experience in what's going on. And I'm the one who coined the term practice member. Okay. I had a contest in my office asking, what should we call people? Because a patient or someone comes in to be fixed, it's a transaction. I come in as few visits as possible for care. I will pay you. I'll do what you tell me to do, and then you can maintain me there. That's a patient. Medically, legally, is to return a person to prior minimal state or the time their first subluxation appeared. What, in utero? Okay. So we talked about that. And a practice member, someone who comes in who wants to collaborate with a practitioner, healing is their spiritual journey. And your job was to help a person collaborate so they could get the innate messages to the educated mind, and they would live a life consistent with this. You weren't telling them, they would experience it. They would come for you to collaborate with them, not as this authority on their life or healing, because they're the authority, and they would have informed choices, what care is about, them make that choice. Between those ideas, that was my first seminar in chiropractic. Class A, Class B subluxations, which you can do and why. And it's always about the person. That was about.
I want to ask you, because I know that there's a lot of students that watch this show. There's a lot of young DCs that watch the show. Actually, it's interesting. I'll go to a lot of seminars, and there's chiropractors that have been practicing for 7 years, 8 years, and they tell me that they've been listening to the show all the way through their college, and now they listen to it while they're out practicing, and they share it with their patients too. So I'm just curious. You had a big practice when you were full-time practice. How long did you do the osseous adjustment before you decided to transition to full network style?
Well, first of all, I was not doing many osseous adjustments. I was doing mostly toggle recoil, a very fast toggle recoil. But I was doing a toggle recoil, and the type of force I was putting in, we tracked it later on. I was able to put a toggle in, and the actual contact less than 1/10,000th of a second. And I was able to get 2 or 3 different vectors in that one and modulate the amount of force. And some people start going in waves from that. So I was doing that after the cord tension was released, and I found no more evidence of that by my different parameters there. And there, I would then do a structural adjustment at that point, if I toggle rails or a structural adjustment. Only, I added occiput to that, only upper cervical, C5, or pelvis. The pelvis generally was with a drop piece most of the time there. Then I started doing network, and what I started doing as I developed the wave, I would do a structural adjustment at times, but what I call teleprocess. So if I was going to adjust atlas, I wanted to see how it would affect pelvis. And I would focus on that, and the pelvis would start moving once the wave went through, because there was a better information exchange from the top and the bottom. But I realized in my assumption, we also had done a longitudinal study with people, and they would not do any structural adjusting for a few months, and actually many people's results, where they're getting more diversified, the results were much less. Also, when the wave went through, if the wave went through and they're not aware of it, what do you mean? Well, I was itchy. Their quality of life was actually less than they started. If they had a respiratory wave going through, first breath, where each vertebral rock changes the afferent signals to the brain, a respiratory wave, which is specifically developed in network care, as with breath, each vertebral rocks. If that happened first, the quality of life was the best. The earlier they had the wave, the better the life changed, the longer they stayed in care. When I left private, so then I felt that the structural adjustment, chiropractic adjustment, helps the body adapt at that level, and it locks in that level of health. But if I want the person to be going beyond that, I want to make sure I'm putting a force in. I don't teach it. I took it out of my teaching. I used to teach structural adjusting because the chiropractor would do it when they're frustrated, or because they thought that that's going to be more effective. And I said I only put a force in once the vertebra is already oscillating. There's no more spinal cord tension, and I put it in there to amplify this new baseline and that type of thing. Never because it's locked, never because it's fixated, never for area pain. And all the care is different in a different way. And there was research I'd done that changed a tremendous number of things. And one of them was I studied how dominant patterns created and eliminated. I read lots of research, and some of the stuff, a neurodystrophic process by medical doctor showing that if they gave diphtheria, typhus, and all the different injections into the animals, they got the disease. If you gave a small amount of a toxin, micro amount of it, just before, they didn't develop the disease. They could block off blood vessels, the heart, the animals would die. Just before, they put a small amount of toxin in, and they would live. And they came up neurologically, the Soviet researchers, Speransky and some other people had studied a whole bunch of different people on how does systems happen, what is healing, how does it happen? And they found that a dominant pattern with the body's facilitated, is looped on, it's not getting to the higher brain, there's not enough energy to organize more information to get up there, and the brain does not want to have cognitive dissonance, so it keeps at a lower level, and associated subluxation. That they eliminate 3 ways. 1, the system doesn't need it. Run across the street, blood pressure drops, blood sugar drops. The second is to compete with, that's allopathic. Allopathic, if something's high, they make it low, they make it high. BJ said, why should a person take a chemical in their body that will make a sick person, a healthy person well, things will make a sick person healthy, okay? But you give something, or I take a pill that makes me go fast, one that makes me go slow, but has every pill know exactly where to go, okay? I used to say that in chiropractic college. So the second is to compete with it. If it's high, you make it low, but you have to decide what high or low is supposed to be for that person and when. The third got me, a non-specific stimulus. Now, Speransky said all disease is a result of neurodystrophic process. The body is believing a certain process. It doesn't get off that pattern. Basically, there's too much stability in the system. Stability in the system means it's not open to change. Instability means it's open to change. The chiropractic adjustment should be a point of instability to open it up to new neural networks with a new experience. The third pattern, non-specific stimulus. A stimulus that the body can't fight against, doesn't know, it distracts the system. And little kids crying, oh, look over there, they're distracted. That's what it is. So a toggle recoil does that. That's it. A gentle contact could do it. A low force contact would do it. But I taught the doctors, match the force, not more or less than it's putting out. And the chiropractic, we learned that force is a missing link. And the whole philosophy with Reggie Gold put together in his Trying to Life is intelligence, force, and matter. You need force to provide energy for the intelligence for innate to organize. But people mistake the force. Force is also energy. We think you're putting any force in is the key. No, 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 no. Instead, the force is already bound up, blocking information in areas that's not available. If you use the right amount of force, innate will find it, observe itself, and take the force that's binding it and liberating it. You don't do that. That's a big difference.
When did you first discover the wave? I know you were saying that you were doing these toggle recoils.
Okay. Well, I found, and I was also using Logan Basic, low force, like toughness, gentle contact in the system. 1986, I developed a phasing system. I'm the one who came up with the concept tonal. Tonal chiropractic is not any low force technique. That's a perversion of what I did. And the article was such with Chris Kent, Ralph Boone, and Graham Dobson, because I was being attacked all around. I said, let's help. This is a traditional view, not a new thing. If you take a new view on something traditional, politically, it's now going to be opposed to something novel. Okay, there. So, and the idea was that D.D. Palmer came up with the term tone, and that if you stretch the neuroskeleton, you alter the vibrational organizing consciousness that comes into the brain. It hits a mental impulse, which is your unique signal of how you organize innate forces, how much energy and information you use, and how it manifests the cells of the body. If you stretch the neuroskeleton, you change the vibrational tone. Therefore, you change the morphology of the cells and the way innate is expressed. Research the past few years actually shows the nerve impulse is not only primary electrical stimulation. When studying anesthetics, how they work, they find it dissolves the myelin sheath. Therefore, the acoustic wave, a sonic wave like phonons instead of photons, cannot communicate across the wave. Therefore, it's not conscious of it, doesn't experience it. And realize the number one factor actually is, just one second here. The communication before the nervous system, and before the nervous system really develops, there's connective tissue communicates the same speed nervous system, and by phonoacoustic waves. If you're between a concert between two speakers, you feel a pulse pressure. That's a primal communication. And they found when that communication hits the surface of a nerve, it alters the membrane, occurs irritation, and nerve impulse is a byproduct of it. Because if a nerve impulse was the base of the communication, he would begin off the synapse dynamically, and it's not there. This gets back to the same principle. Tone, I have found that, and in 1986 I developed it, there are 5 basic spinal cord tension patterns that occur in the body. Each produces different consciousness level, a conversation with a person, and I found a priority how to address it. That was called the phasing system. Torque release technique came about when Marvin Talsky was a network practitioner who did not like to do structural adjusting. He asked Donny, can I use the instrument to do this? I said, yes. If it works instead of a structural adjustment, we'll teach it. So he wound up teaching my phasing system and everything with that, saying, well, you didn't develop it. It took one of the techniques. I said, it was my protocol I put together. So I said to him at that point, I said, listen, to carry something original, I'm not upset about doing it. People help people. Put T1, put sphenoid, put L5. I don't care. I just mention these things off the top of my head, and that's what he put into the system. Jay Holder, a couple of years later, said to me, Donny, I didn't realize that we ripped off your stuff. I really didn't know. Marvin didn't tell me about that. I said, okay. And then he came a couple of years after. He said, could you tell us how to make a wave? We thought the wave would happen. I said, I can and I won't, okay, because it's a different model. To give an idea, tonal method, please don't use this as any low-force technique, because it's only tonal if it's changing the frequency of the tone, and each one has a different vibrational frequency and alters, like B.J. Palmer talked about and D.T. Palmer talked about it, the 5 phases. I'm also mostly upper cervical network. Occiput C1, C2, C5. Why? C5 is like another frame of magnum. It's where the largest enlargement of the spinal cord is, with the smallest opening. And by the way, it has also been shown that the C5, C6, C7 can have, and C4 of strips of dura attached to the gutter transverse process. It's also a meningeal effect there. So we looked at that also. So with looking at these type of aspects, it totally changes everything in there. So I developed a phase and started teaching it. Doctors can predict by the way a conversation a person is having what tension patterns are organized. And I think what happens, every cell of the body has this consciousness change, because chiropractic is a conscious discipline. And we're writing an article this year on the spine as a modulator of consciousness. We have enough evidence for that. So in the answer for that, after the phasing system came out, I was looking at both ends. And one of the reasons that the phasing system is, I believe, the major distortion occurs to the frame of magnum at C2 and C3 place, and C2 and C1. And I did x-rays of people developing it, and I found out that if I did not take care of atlas and occiput, C5 or sacrum pelvic sway, very often I wasn't getting an accurate listing of where the axis was in space. The axis would shift for that. So that became a basis of this. So no matter what technique, my whole purpose in teaching chiropractic is help consistent with BJ and DD. If it was present now, how would they do it? And BJ Palmer said that he was always, in my Tom Whitehorn instructor told me about this, that produced the nerve force carrier wave. In Controlled Clinical Research, he talks about it in that BJ Palmer book. He said, if we take the heart, we take the surface of the electromyograph, the EEG brain pattern you have. If you take the heartometer, take all the organs together and put all the waves in one waveform, you would have a person's own innate nerve force carrier, which is how innate connects to the body. Uneducated innate would become one, the world will change. His whole life he was looking for that. I said, I'm going to find a way of making what I call the nerve force carrier wave. So in 1986, 1987, I found a way of producing the wave. Sometimes spines got better, but people had spiritual awakenings and experiences. I didn't know what it was. We started being attacked on different state boards as chiropractic was moving into insurance, regional areas, and allopathic as the cartel was being developed. That's a whole nother conversation there. 28 jurisdictions, never complaining about what we did. Just for patients' complaints that they were reporting things socially, spiritually, in other aspects, as they were trying to get more insurance that way, and going into a different financial model. So I found a wave. So people were getting extraordinary changes. I said, I want to see what changes really happen. So University of California, Irvine, we did the first study, Department of Neuroanatomy, Neurobiology, and Sociology. It's still the largest population of chiropractic patients ever done with a subluxation-based method that actually looks at physical, emotional, mental, social, spiritual changes. We couldn't call it spiritual, so we had to call it life enjoyment. It's still the most powerful thing ever done, and it's hidden. I got attacked politically because if you're studying these, Donny, why you're showing network is better than the methods? No, I'm hopefully setting a standard. Other people also research what freaking changes you're really getting. Why do you want to research? You don't want to prove anything. Research should never prove chiropractic anything. Stop that shit. Research should show a new way of seeing the world, things that every discipline could be improved with. New physiology. Through chiropractic, we understand the world. How research that, that's what it should be about there. And the objective should not be to adjust the subluxation. The objective is a greater innate expression to a coherent nervous system in its own unique innate way. And your technique is a means of doing that or not. So that's what happened. Like the wave came about. I was going to finish teaching chiropractic because it was too strange. I had no way of describing it. I met Jackie Knowles, became my wife, Danny's mother there. And at that point, we started saying, this is really important for humanity. And I started realizing this is what chiropractic would be if BJ was alive and doing it. But I mean, understand at the time, chiropractic was doing all this crazy stuff. So we brilliantly said, like a franchise, how do I make it scalable? If they just look at the upper cervical spine and adjust that where the body's not adaptive, we could get to the whole world. They won't mess people up, and there'd be a better world. That's what it's about. But the idea at that time is, how could I correct a major distortion in someone's health? What if the objective is, how could I, through a person's lifetime, help them evolve strategies in the nervous system and create operating systems that have never happened before, where the body could self-regulate subluxation and the process make a different world? That's what I started doing. And it looked weird for people. It definitely looked weird. But if innate is innate and it's a force of the universe, it should look weird. It should look unreasonable, and you should get unreasonable results. But we have to then model it and have outcomes for this. That led me to surface EMG analysis, studying the wave, and I found that it is a nonlinear process. A linear system is a small problem, small force. A large problem, a big force. Nonlinear is living systems. If there's a small change in the system at the right time, the right place, the whole system changes. This is really big. So it proved it. We proved as care progresses, there's more information and more coherence in the wave. And we match that with the type of changes we have understanding that innate is not just one intelligence. As we map the way the body moves, each subset of innate intelligence, each energetic intelligence has a domain, a different aspect of the body, how it functions, a different way it moves, and we have mathematical signatures for those self-organizing signals. Each person is their signal. So you could want to correct something, but I want the innate intelligence to do the correction and make sure it's really happening. I'm not looking to correct anything.
So back to
give another boogeyman, or do you want to help the person help develop in their life greater beingness, greater coherence, and help the spine to start self-regulating? The spine is an organ of consciousness.
You've made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession on the world's #1 chiropractic podcast. This episode is brought to you by Peach State Payments. Ethical processing, more profit, less stress. Chiro HD, more than an EHR. Practice management simplified. The Chiro Speaking Company. Attract, educate, and convert. Chiro Spring, cloud-based, user-friendly software with all the essential features chiropractors need. Rudman Relight, the IFCO, Chiro Moguls, Chiro Health USA, Sherman College of Chiropractic, Pure Chiro Notes, Titronics, and Life West College of Chiropractic. Let's hustle. Hey docs, let me ask you something. Are you adjusting patients but not adjusting your revenue? Because a lot of chiropractors are still undercharging without even realizing it. They're accepting insurance allowances that are just too low. And they're hesitant to raise the fees because they're worried about pushback from patients. The problem is, when your fees and financial systems aren't aligned, it creates a slow leak in your practice. And when you try to grow, more marketing, more patients, maybe even another location, the leak gets bigger. There's actually a smarter way to handle this. Chiro Health USA helps chiropractors charge appropriately when insurance is available while still serving cash or limited benefit patients through a compliant discount medical plan. The results? Many practices see revenue increases around 15 to 20% without adding more visits. Same patients, better margins, more freedom. If you want to stop leaving money on the table and build a practice that's both profitable and compliant, check out chirohealthusa.com to learn more. The spine is an organ of consciousness.
Holy
I
shit,
love that.
right? If it also, Okay, ask about Wilbur. Ask about Wilbur. Oh, ask.
There's more to this because you're taking me on this journey with you, and I have to get more context before we get to there. Not an adjustment, it's an entrainment.
Okay.
And how does that definition develop? And back to tone. Whenever I see you and you do the entrainment with me, you always check and you like touch the tone of my system and you see how it's like calmed down, I guess, or relaxed or integrated.
Okay. To answer the question, I have to go to Wilbur, okay, if I can.
Okay, so Ken Wilber's 4 quadrants.
Ken Wilber is the greatest spiritual writer and philosopher of centuries. He studied consciousness in all aspects. Actually, my system since 1980s, I have been every part of it in teaching. At the core of it are his basic teachings, okay? Because he studied how is conscious created, how are ideas transferred, all the spiritual traditions. And I wrote an article in his integral journal on reorganizational healing, which is now called epi-healing, which is instead of restoring terms from private state, how do you help them organize to a state they'd never been at, never existed before? And that involves different aspects of how you personally organize energy information, which is another piece of it. And he wanted to write an article on the ideology of my methods consistent with his principles and theories. And for a new medicine there, or medicine as a larger term for helping heal. And when I moved to Colorado, I found he was my next door neighbor, which is really interesting. So before the article got put into the integral journal, everyone who's going to be that, it's a very respected journal. Before it could go in there, everyone speaks with him. He doesn't tell the editors what to say, but have you looked at this? Is this congruent? And I have the exact quote from him. And he said, and Donny, Dr. Donny Epstein, Donny, we know him as Donny. And this exact quote, and I have a recording. I don't know if he's psychic, panpsychic, or just fucking weird. This guy is the only person I ever call out about Jesus and healing. It's not just materialistic. Then talking about the wave, he said, this is one of the greatest things he's ever done here. He said, and he has research that actually supports and better understands what he's actually doing. I've studied consciousness. I've studied Kundalini. There's nothing that even comes close to what he's bringing to the world. Okay. Now, a holon is a particle. I know there's you can listen so many times. Because listen, I know that your Chiro Hustle is a major point of getting all ideas out. Chris Kent, with his On Purpose, is a major one. Chris and Pat, years ago, I was the number one person on there. Because, what you're going to get with me is unreasonable, extraordinary. What you're going to get to me is, I've never been supportive of the chiropractic profession. I've been supportive of chiropractic principle and what schools will support that. Because the principle is bigger than chiropractic. What I'm teaching now and different in my book, The Secrets Code, is what if Innate mental impulse doesn't just organize your body? What if it organizes with enough energy, every aspect of your life, where you fit in and your structure of your life? Okay. Because the shape, position, tone, and tension of the spine is in relationship to shape, position, tone, and tension in your life. A holon is a part of reality. For something to exist, there have to be 4 quadrants. 4 quadrants. The objective and the subjective. The implicit and the explicit. Okay. The upper right quadrant is the objective that can be seen and measured, the it. Now, if it needs all 5 quadrants to exist, to evolve, all 4 quadrants have to be evolved. When anyone drops out, that system starts falling apart. What we're doing network, and I've been doing all my systems, epi-energetics, I call it. And energetics is a science of how energy is changed form within a system, how it changes the system. Epi is beyond or around, which is the intangible or the spiritual. It's how spiritual and physical come together, which is the original principle. Okay. So now in everything we're doing in chiropractic, it's really how energy is changing form with information. That's what it is. And every assessment is about that. So in chiropractic traditionally deals with the right quadrant, upper right, the subluxation, the leg check, the vertebra, the nerve. If you're doing that, you have to get to higher levels. For example, an atom, a molecule, a cell, a person, a planet. It has to keep evolving to higher orders, even if that's going to exist. You have to keep going bigger in how it impacts other things. The lower right is systems, how they interact. I've studied systems 33 decades. In systems theory, whether it be in business, using in business now also, or physiology, there are three parts. One, the objective, the big idea, the purpose of the system. The second are the parts. The third part is how they interact. Okay. If you change the part, nothing in the system changes. If you change how they interact, which the nervous system does, the parts actually change. If you change the purpose of the system, all three changes. This is in textbooks on business, so you know. So that's why, okay, here. So what I introduced is there subsystems that regulate, because I said, instead of trying to correct the subluxation, what if I can increase the system to advance spinal and neural integrity so there's enough information energy so it's self-regulate, self-observe and regulate? What we found in the network research is that what pure awareness actually part of that process healing. Awareness what's going on. And why you're not aware is none of energy got up to the higher brain. When you could be aware of it, it's a whole different story. And awareness. And that's really important. So I took network chiropractic and I want people to be aware of the different energetic intelligence that organize how it moves, how it shifts, and what's there. Also, what season of healing you're in. When you're aware of it, it goes to the higher cortex, you get messages coming back down again. There's evolution occurring. So I read an article by Punjabi, and that from Yale, orthopedist. And I wanted to look. I got a chiropractor. No one ever told me what a healthy spine is supposed to look like, smell like, feel like. No one ever taught me what health. It took chiropractic heals, and not one course on healing. How the freak can a chiropractic help create extraordinary healing, even recognize it, if you never learn what healing is? And you never know what a perfect spine is supposed to be like. They told me in school, you get it at the end. Yeah, you got it at the end, right? Yeah, okay. So I said, I'm going to do it. The ladder's always the most crowded at the bottom, and I ain't going to be at the bottom, I'll tell you that. So what happens now is this, is that he said there are different subsystems. Your body has a cardiovascular system, respiratory system, but who talks about how they all connect? A specialist is someone who knows more and more about less and less. I want someone who knows more and more about more and more because they have the experience of it first. So he said there's a passive system. Vertebral ligaments of the disc, they're not passive. They're very active in what they do, but they're passive because you need something to move it. And what moves it? Nerves. And that is, okay, nerves actually move it, okay. So, no, I'm sorry, muscles move it. That's called the active system because it actually moves. But the exact angular position of each vertebra sends different afferent messages emotionally, physically, from that nerve supply and up to the brain, what's going on. So when a vertebra starts rocking, it's changing the afferent. BJ, I think, had it wrong on one thing. It's not the efferent, it's the afferent signal that's there. And if you change garbage in, garbage out, to look at the garbage out, I want to see what happens with that. So if a person has a problem with the stomach or the heart, I want to make sure the nerve supply on its own is starting to rock. And respiration changing the afferent signal. So muscles move bones, everyone knows that. And the nervous system is the brain and spinal cord, okay? So you're in a car accident, and it's all about moving energy between them and information, which is what energetics is about. So a person's car accident. There's too much, or somebody has a trauma. This shouldn't happen to me. like energy conditioning. That's a concussion of forces. What happens then is the nervous system, the neural system, may tell the muscular system to lock. Okay? That locks the vertebra. Okay? And I said, well, I see this, and I'm adding the meningeal system into that too. And in my early seminars, I called it the spinal meningeal functional unit. It's one system. Now you say it's a nervous system. Well, you understand, that, for example, the white blood cells, every white blood cell produces every neuropeptide. You should learn this in school. Every neuropeptide the brain produces. It produces, the white blood cells and nerves produce more insulin than the pancreas produces. The hormones from the heart regulate the brain. The white blood cells are formed in the bone marrow. So then is the nervous system a gland? What about the bone? It's one whole system. This is by the work of Candace Pert, molecules of emotion. She actually mentions me in the book. She's chief biochemist of the National Institute of Mental Health. I'd add that, and I added one more system, the emotional subsystem. What's that? Well, it's not located in space like your lap. When you get up, it disappears. Or the bagel hole disappears when you eat it. It's simple. The emotional system, if you alter the tone or tension of any tissue of the body or have it in a limited range, it alters the receptor site activity. Neuropeptides have to bind on the surface of the membrane to create a genetic response, and emotion is not about laughing or crying. Emotion is below the level of mind, before mind. Actually, immunizing you is about a subtle change in the environment because all the senses are about the field around you. It actually does it and actually prepares you for a change in the environment and signals others. So the emotional system and the immune system part of the same. Okay. So what I wanted to see in a dynamic way, and it's a dynamical system, that's all how it dynamically interacts. I want to see when I take care of a person that they look more alive than dead. I want to see that the passive, active neurocontrol system are interacting, sharing energy information, and in a way that makes a difference. Entrainment is a term used in music. It's two harmonic tones. I call it a phasing system because it's also a tonal model there. I'm the only one who has true tonal chiropractic. Okay, there. And we check to see it. So with this happens there, and that's real important. So we take care of somebody. I apply a force on sacrum. I see it's a connective tissue of the bioenergetic intelligence realigning, which also means the cord. If the ankles are coming up and down, it means the cord's moving up and down the neural canal are there, and that's affecting the connective tissue, it's connected neural control system. The idea of all of these are to dissipate energy and tension to protect the central nervous system. That's what it's about. So that's the next thing. So what I came up with in chiropractic is that it's a vertebra, but what creates spinal neural integrity? How could I advance its energy efficiency for that? So in network, from network spinal analysis on, we have the same principles, but now we look at the actual energy information at each level of energy and each level of consciousness and each energetic intelligence. There's a different, more efficient, a more energy efficient movement. That's what we're checking that all the time. They're neurological tests, really, and tests of consciousness. So that's the lower right. So what's the difference? I'm adjusting, yeah, but what's happening to the dynamic systems to maintain and actually evolve new levels of organizational intelligence? If there are higher evolutionary changes in the spine, there would have to be higher levels of information energy, and that's also consciousness. What is consciousness? Consciousness, and this is my definition, it's supported by what's called quantum neurology and quantum psychology. Consciousness is an emerging property of energy and information efficiency. What I learned years ago is what creates consciousness also is frequency entrained neural networks, higher number, the higher level of consciousness. So I said, I'm going to help create frequency trained spinal oscillators. So now from up here, it goes from up here to there. And that's where we started developing the network with a spinal gateway. And the gateway is the access point to the mental impulse and into the field and sending the signal back down. It's more complicated, but it's a simple pathway. And that was inspired by acupuncture, as well as acupuncture research study there, where they take the acupuncture and they put it in, they move it. As they're moving it to the exact spot of greater hydration and greater electrical conductivity. And the summary of this study, when I was involved when developing it with Dr. Rod Banks, Blanks, University of California, Irvine, the assumption made, I didn't see the final paper, was that the acupuncture point is an interdimensional vortex. And we can't see it, a pathway or a gateway, which is the physical body in that. And I took that and said, well, the adjustment we're doing on that subluxation is at the spinal gateway that way. So we looked at that. So now, chiropractors generally deal with the upper right. Show me your shoulder, show me about this, that's whatever it is. So then we look at how the system's organized. That requires that we move to the other side also. That's great. You can watch a person sleep, but you don't know if they're rested. A person can have sex and they make love. You can eat a meal and they're satisfied. People don't give a damn about the right side unless you tell them what it means. The left side is about your subjective experience. What is your experience of this? Is it deeper and deeper, more evolved experiences going up more? Is, oh, how my shoulder's moving and it feels really good. Well, it's really not my shoulder. My shoulder's locked when I have a challenge with my mother. And that, it's about that. It's to cosmology of it. And then lower on the left side is what I derive from, and that's the cultural meaning. What's the cultural collective of that? The bottom one is the collective, the top is there. What I brought to chiropractic is once you get the systems happening with it, then what is a person's personal experience? That's what we have with the questionnaire. Not how do you feel? How do you feel about how you feel, which tells me how much energy information. The upper right is a person's personal experience. Now, network spinal analysis was a right side, with sometimes talking about the upper left. But many people, what they call doing network, are trying to compare their experience, and they're not looking at the efficiency of spinal integrity systems away. That's one of the things I decided I'm going to check something else, because the person comes first, not the spine. And only an extraordinary experience can change it. So, for example, you may have a Margaret Mead anthropologist talking about a cultural dance. That's the actual observant, outward, explicit thing in the lower right quadrant. But Joseph Campbell will tell you the mythology of it. You may have the upper right, you may have a Freud, you may have a Jung talking about the experience of it. If you get all four quadrants, this just must evolve and actually become a phenomenon. And that's what we're looking at. So we tech network, yes, we teach this technique, but if a person's at the table and their arms are coming out and going like having a God type experience, what's happening? Is the gateway locked off? Or the next like that? Is Atlas going into the anterior axis posterior? You're getting excited, many people, about the left side experience. But the whole reason all of this works because it's freaking great chiropractic helping the spine get to that point. Please don't use any of my teachings as a transformation or spiritual path. There, it's not meant that. Those things are supposed to be a quality of great chiropractic care, of an enhanced nervous system. Otherwise, what happens is people having these spiritual experiences and running a nuclear blaster system when it's like they have angina. They don't have enough to adapt to it. That's not what we're doing here. So it's all four quadrants. So in network, we now teach the systems, discover experience. The reorganizational healing, which is now epi-healing, to make it coherent, involves different aspects. One is the seasons. How much energy is present? What's possible? What intelligence? Season to discover, it's below the level of mind, Life is about your circumstance. There's a problem. There's not enough energy to go further. That deals with bio-intelligence and the emotional intelligence, which activates the active system, passive. That's primitive. That has to be handled. Then the next season of transform, there's a me here making a choice before a circumstance. That deals with the lower mind, upper mind, developing a sense of self or identity. How do I know? When adjusting people in network, we found these responses, and we found how much information was there. We saw responses people get in care at what point. Different responses. And then you have the awaken experiences. Oh, I want to do awaken. Why don't you tell somebody who has severe angina, max block rates, to run a race? It's not about you. It's about the person. We're talking about beingness. Beingness changes at every level. Coherence change that could be measured. So what we're speaking about now is all 4 quadrants. So you're going to take an event. They're going to try to take care of a person. The bottom line for all of it is what level of energy are they? Is the system collapsing? Is it keeping status quo? Is it growing? Or is it more cosmic? That's the basis. So when you read the book Secrets Code, you'll understand that. The basis of all of my teachings now is how much energy is available for the organizing wisdom, which wisdom to self-organize. What I'm talking about, these principles are being presented to some world top leaders and before some major conference in the world. Well, some are getting the network care, but some are getting the principle around it also. So we're talking about all 4 quadrants. So that's the difference. You'll give me a network seminar, they're going to say, but what did you experience when you got off the table? What did you as a practitioner feel? When you're walking around table to table in the office, you got to get a sense of what you're experiencing. And if you know the energy information, you can know what's going on in the person, how to approach and how to adjust them more effectively. I call it entrainment because entrainment is what happens when there's a harmonic agreement or coherence between parts of a system. Are some adjustments entrainments? Yes, not many. Are all entrainments adjustments? No. Because a chiropractor is not using all 4 quadrants and really look at the integration, there may still be a subluxation. Because the vertebra's rocking doesn't mean that this subluxation is corrected.
Wow. You know, I talk to so many chiropractors, Donny, and I've never had anybody ever tell me your spine is an organ of consciousness. And I talk to other ones and they're like, it's all about the correction. It's all about the results.
Well, and that's right. And what is the result for the person? That's the point. And their practice will resolve around. People come for network care because they say, I want to have the energy so I connect to the universe, I can make a difference in the world.
Well, I want to go back to your book too, The Seeker's Code. I just got through the first 100 pages, and one of the things is on energetics, like you're talking about. And there's poor, neutral, rich, and super rich. Let's dive into that a little bit. I know you were talking about that on a different frequency, but yes, let's talk about that so it makes sense to people so they want to go read the book too.
What I study is how do living systems self-organize. Healing is an expression of that, okay? And there's the healing in all 4 quadrants. How does it show up there? Now, so, and this is everything I found is by providing extraordinary chiropractic, extraordinary experiences there. And you know, as far as a business practice, my height of volume of practice, I was still, 1,000 visits a week. Okay, all separate adjusting rooms. I didn't talk to people very much. If they had a question, I sent them to waiting room and said, listen, you have this problem, talk to people, let them tell you, because they're the community. I outsourced this community for them to talk to other people, not me. I'm going to take care of you. That's it. I'll explain what I'm finding. You tell me what experience is, we'll match it together. And eventually a network now, the idea is for the practitioner to match the person's spinal and neural integrity, energy state, with where they are in life and their experience, and they should match. Okay, there. And predict.
It sounds kind of like concept therapy.
Well, it is, concept therapy was doing, and its early version, It's all other things did, but at a higher level of organization. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. But you're not giving the person a concept. They're revealing it on their own. That's the difference.
Yes.
You hear. So, energy poor system. Well, we got in a living system. Now, the system is you. This affects your health and your body sense, and the two different things. Many people have a body sense problem, not health problem. Okay. Next is the relationship intimacy. They're two different things. Other is business and finance. They're different things. Okay. Companies don't go into business. Why? Because you want to make money. Money, you can make money not be in business and business no money. They're different systems. I'm mentioning this because your nervous system, when you think about something, when you're thinking about it, the information is not in your brain. The cloud is the space around you. Thoughts are there. The amount of energy in the place you go determines how much there is. If you have a challenge, energy poor, means the system does not have any, just barely survive. So Innate is going to reduce your connection to other cells. It's going to put you into like a coma. If you think about money or business, that'll collapse, because whatever you think about, when you think about that, if there's not enough energy in that pathway, it collapses. And not enough energy, it goes pre-rational, it's below level of mind, bio-emotional energy starts falling apart, not enough metabolic, and you're really ill. That's when you emerge from the hospital. You feel like you're suffering, you're going to die. And your health problem is always challenged when there's a problem in a relationship, just be business finance. Get this, it's not one thing. The largest studies done, like 25 years ago that I read, with men who had back pain and disability, the number one predictor of having been out on disability for back pain was money problems or problems there. For women, it's relationship. It's the body is the emotion. It's all one system. Okay, so an energy poor system is collapsing. Its mortgage is underwater unless some other source of energy comes in to organize more information. Is dying. It's a feeling of death. Okay, if the energy poor, there's no conversation. The person says, there's no anything. They're frozen like a vagal block. That's it. It's collapsing. The next thing is any neutral. That's what most of us are. It's enough to survive and have the status quo. We want to maintain it. How you doing? Pretty well. How do you know you're neutral? When you're neutral is when there's a reason. I'm like this because of this. I'm like this because of that. In neutral, there is no you there. It's not enough to have the higher cortex use. It goes to the thalamus and flows down. Maybe some to the cortex, but not enough for you to realize there's a me here choosing. It's no choice. Life is what happens to you. How do you know? Well, in practice, guess what? You finally get to 50 people a day, and then you break your leg and it drops down. You finally get to $100,000 or $200,000, $1 million, whatever it is, and there's a lawsuit. The job of all regulatory agencies of government is to make sure you don't go down to poor and you don't go up to rich. You stay in there. If you're neutral, you believe that you're living the matrix and you're controlled. You think life is happening to you. That's what it's about. So telling somebody this subluxation is causing something maintains them to neutral. You cannot claim more. All you want less. Why you in care? I want less blood pressure. I want less of this. There's no concept of more. It's just minimizing. So your life is minimized. I have this diagnosis and live this prognosis.
It runs in my family.
That's in neutral. But nothing will change. You may adjust the subluxation, but the person's not going to change. There's no new level of coherence. And there's no beingness. That's when you just look at the right quadrant. There's not even ability to even understand. They have no awareness of that. Okay. My hope, one of my purpose in life is to help 2.2 billion people, directly and indirectly, go from neutral to rich. Now, high neutral, low neutral is pretty much emotional and thalamic. Let's discuss that. High neutral, someone's getting up to the cortex, I propose, because you know there's a problem only exists when you're neutral. It doesn't exist anything else. It's not even a problem. It's just poor. And energy, high neutral, there's a problem, and it's you. It's a me. I have to make a choice. So I'm working on it. Oh, I had a problem, perhaps I'm working. If you're working on it, it's not going to change. Neutral, you're going to work on it because the same you that doesn't have enough coherence or beingness is making the challenges, but you're having effort. If there's effort to get the result, you're still neutral. I'm working on it. Well, I told Paul, how are you working on it? Well, I'm looking to let go of it. How do you let go of it? How are you holding it? I don't know, neutral. Work. You mean the same you is doing it? No. There's no real you. Energy rich is different. Now, I'm going to do this here. Listen to this. I've done it with thousands of people, and it's worked all around the world. Think right now, think of a challenge you have in life. The biggest challenge that you can't solve, a problem in practice, a problem in relationship, a problem in finance, some problem. Okay? And just nod your head when you get it. Okay? Do the same thing right now. Here, James. You got it? Put your hand up, everyone, because this is a ritual we're doing. As soon as you no longer can find that problem, or it has less of a charge, if it does, put your hand down. I've done this with crowds, with thousands of people, not at one time, but hundreds of times, and individually. People don't know me. And 90 some odd plants of people within 2 minutes cannot even think of that. Because with more energy, there's more information. The body organizes at a higher level. Suddenly, all of a sudden it happens. So for example, someone has a lawsuit going on. And how does chiropractic affect it? It's you. You're nervous. You don't see the world. You see it as you are. And your nervous system, the shape, position, tone, and tension of your spine is related to the shape, position, tone of your life. As a consciousness application, it opens the door to everyone. And looking at what's the spine doing, what brain body. You're talking about people have a injury, a concussion. It's a spinal injury. And it's going to happen around the time you have problems with financial relationship with something else. To downsize yourself, because Innate smart. He's trying to downsize, put you in a coma in that type of area. So what happened? Tell me, what happened? You were focused on something. What happened after?
Well, I was listening to you talk about state of consciousness, and I keep on going back to this idea that your spine is an organ of consciousness. And I've listened to you discuss the evolution of energetics and how that affects all of us, and how you help with the work that you do. And over here, I'm thinking to myself, I'm 3 years, I'm 50, and I'm saying I'm not as fit as I'd like to be, physically fit. And back to what you're saying is I'm neutral, because I'm saying I'm trying, I'm working on it. I'm in the process of doing the things to get more fit.
And then what happened after I did what I did?
Well, I raised my hand like you told me to. I gave you the nod, and now it seems like it's going to be easy.
That's it. Listen to this. We're recording this. Okay. We're in different parts of Colorado. I have people all around the country. Some might call us 47 countries, that type of people. And I do this. I get this. And while I'm doing this, I'm thinking about you. If I'm not thinking about you, if I'm in the same room with me, this is the key. If the spine is becoming energy rich, then everyone you take care of is constructively impacting other people, and they're part of the answer.
Wow.
Chiropractic is the way I found out about this. There are many other ways, but that chiropractic, this has a different impact. Okay? So the book is taking the principle of chiropractic and saying, how could you use this in your life? Which is great. When you apply specific to chiropractic, you have a health benefit nothing else has. But now I like to see in the future that chiropractic is actually forming a new discipline overall, which chiropractic really should be part of conceptual. And that is the energetics of human performance, because I believe health is part of it. And I believe if it's human performance, it affects every aspect.
And when we change, the world changes around us type idea.
Yeah, because we don't see the world as it is, we see it as we are. I believe it's really a big stretch, but I believe it's about 10,000 versions, each of us, all coexisting. And with the coherence, we tap into another one. We're playing apps. All we're doing is playing apps. And until you're energy rich, the matrix owns you.
So are you saying that I had to become more energy rich for us to connect on a podcast, and it finally happened?
That's exactly. I was waiting for that. I was waiting for it, and I have an uncanny sense of this. Okay, I was waiting for you to do the podcast, not for you to prove yourself, not to feel accepted or liked, but moving to the point of asking, "Who the freak am I?" At this point in life, I should be someplace else. No, I must be someone different. Once you get to that point, that's high neutral to rich, then we can have a conversation.
And it happened.
Yeah. Yep.
That's called, in my world, I call that manifesting.
Well, actually, the principle of trying of life is about manifesting. See, where I'm at is I take care of people who they do network. I mean, all my business is based on the same thing. In network and chiropractic, we take energy that's bound up, unavailable, bound up energy information, liberate it so it's available. Innate has more possibility. That's a healing discipline. I have other disciplines, which is based on using unbound energy, but it's not the same thing, because there it's not about healing. It's about a different aspect. Because you know what? In my life, I know what I'm here for. And it doesn't fit into any one box. Like God is too big for one religion. And where would chiropractic be if we followed BJ and DJ's integrated principle and said, with enough energy, Innate organizes every orchestration or the morphology of the entire life?
Can I ask you a really hard question?
Okay. No, maybe a hard question.
Last question.
There's no such a hard question. It's just shitty answers.
Why are chiropractors focusing more on therapies rather than the adjustment and the patient?
Well, first, they haven't had no chiropractic, because no healthcare discipline is a healthcare discipline. And none of them is about the patient, because they're licensed to treat a certain type of condition, to treat somebody and restore them, number one. Why do they tolerate it or not know better? I'll give you one simple thing. They have not had a chiropractic enough experience bridging the gap between chiropractic technique and unreasonable, extraordinary healing to the manifestation of the mental impulse. I don't know anyone who has ever said, Donny's adjusted me and trained. I don't know if Donny's ever adjusted me and trained me. I don't know if anybody's ever said that. If I took care of you, you know it. Okay, but I have a different standard. Chiropractors and students, listen, one more thing. I know there's a long call. We had this. Maybe you may want to break this up into two parts also, if you want to hear. And I want all my people and all their patients, practitioners, to hear this. No matter how much money you make, no matter how many patients you see, no matter what results you get, you're still not going to feel you're enough. Please, listen, when you graduate high school, do you think I'll be enough then? Did you feel better? No. Now I'll get into college. When I get out of college, I'll feel like I'm enough? No. Covered? No. The point is, you're not enough. Don't expect having more money or more patients or more acknowledgments or the relationship you have is ever going to make you feel like you're enough. Because none of you are enough for what you're made for. When you stop trying to change your circumstance, learn more, do more, to feel like you're enough, there's liberation. None of us are enough for what we're made for. None of us are enough for the principle. That's why it's a sacred trust. But if instead of being pain on that, if you're serving people, not to be enough, but for innate to be a better expression, everything's different. May you take your not enoughness and make it into humility, and make your pain of life, if anything in life, what instead you make it a gap between you are where you must be, and instead turn it into a hunger. I have, over decades, done that, where I have a hunger instead of pain, and that hunger is never filled. Even get on this call, I felt I'm not enough to do the call. What happens then, instead of trying to make the gap between where you are and must be, instead of making it smaller, make it bigger. So big that spirit has to enter, and it becomes unreasonable. Don't go for reasonable results. My suggestion, learn what healing is. Come to a healing fest, a gate. It's 189th we're doing. Experience what network is in a group environment, the different 12 stages of healing experience. Watch what's happening. We have people who've been paralyzed their life walking in the moment. We have people, kids who development and neurological process couldn't even cross the wall, walking across the room. Get to be where the magic is happening. Start observing what really works. Stop hanging out with people who tell you what doesn't happen. My last semester in chiropractic college, an instructor, I really didn't like. He said the manipulation is a placebo way. But I could learn from anyone. Either someone teach you how to be or how not to be. In between is more difficult. He said, we all gathered in the school campus on the lawn. We held hands together. And he said, this weekend, you're going to graduate. And what's going to happen is you're going to be one of them. So don't complain, why don't those chiropractors do that? You're one of them. A question. If you were the last chiropractor, what would happen?
Thank you, Donny. This is episode 769 and 770. It's going to be my first two-part episode. And really appreciate you spending some time with me and the audience, and just so thankful for the messages that you shared and the connection. You're so authentic. You're so real.
Well, I try to be other people, but it hasn't worked. I can only be number two at other people. Find, and no matter what doctor you see, no matter who you're a chiropractor, ask them what's the objective of care? How do you know it's working? How will I know it's working? Okay. Those are questions to ask. Would anyone who's practicing network spinal analysis by the nature of it, even that, was supposed to do outcome assessments of outcome assessments of the passive active neural control emotional system, from when they find the spine, outcome assessment of progress. Anyone network spinal is looking to do that and see that the person is actually reorganizing and their energy state is there. What we're teaching in the network programs, what's different, is you can play all the forces and the body may move the way you want it to move. What's the person's energy state? Okay, it's super rich is a spiritual state. If you're rich, people are neutral. If you're rich, in your presence, in the room, in the spine, the nervous system, someone who's poor can move up to neutral. Someone who's neutral can move to rich. With super rich, someone who is poor, collapsing for a moment, could be super rich. That's a spiritual state. It's not a place you want to stay at, because it will disturb whoever you think you are and tell you you're full of shit. Put you with people you don't want to be with, saying things you don't want to do. And it's not you're going to feel great. Sometimes you're going to feel the hell of the world, because you're going to know what darkness is. And rather than say, oh, my family just brought me down, I have the light, and I meant to go where the dark is. Because the purpose of the candle is not to shine for its own illumination, same with you. And bless you. And James, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. I'll see you soon. Like I always close out on the Chiro Hustle podcast, you guys are just one story away. Keep hustling. See you guys on the next episode. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to Chiro Hustle. Don't forget to subscribe and check back next week to continue hustling.